Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Combat Connections with your host, Lucario, and today, special guest, Alex Borschel, also known as Zanjael, the head of Martial Arts Alliance, who will focus on business development and bring martial arts to the 21st century. Zanjael, welcome and thank you for being here.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Okay, so what we're going to be doing today is getting a little sense about who you are, what you're working on, and then asking you some common questions that martial artists tend to get.
Absolutely.
Okay, so first off, why don't you tell us which martial arts have you trained? Just do you currently train?
So I began when I was 3, doing Taekwondo with WTF Cookie Kwan. I practiced that for about 10 years before migrating to ITF Taekwondo and picking up American-based Krav Maga. From there, meanwhile, I was also doing Hapkido, and around 12, I started doing Kendo out at DC Budokai. And when I was around 15, I began doing Muay Thai and practiced that for a few years alongside Bagua, Yang style. Though unfortunately, I only got as far as Lion. And from there, I've sort of been exploring the world and practicing. I practiced Shotokan out in Israel and Europe. I have experience with Shorin Ryu, Aikido, and I've had a very good fortune of meeting a lot of world experts in their fields, like Sao Tome from Aikido, the Miyazaki brothers from Kendo. I knew Jun Reed. These guys were all amazing martial artists who I think had a big influence on what I did.
That's amazing. You seem to have done like quite a lot out there. From the martial arts you have done, what's your favorite aspects or your favorite parts of them?
Well, I would say that my favorite aspects of them would be that they help improve who you are as a person. In the beginning, it's sort of about the techniques and sparring, but as you begin to find use case and teach others, it becomes much more realized in how it can improve your character as a person. And I think I appreciate that more. So one of my teachers ended up being one of the founders of the Me Too movement, Bob Bland. She really honed in for me ox draws and roundhouse kicks. And I think out of one particular school system, a large amount of us have gone on to do humanitarian work and become doctors or agents for FBI and trying to make a social impact that's beneficial.
So would you say there's a correlation between martial artists and positive people in the public figure?
I would say so. I think it has a positive feedback on people's character.
That's yeah, we definitely, I think we here Combat Connections, we definitely agree with that sort of sentiment. I think martial artists, as in general, and obviously things go different for everyone, but martial arts should improve who you are as a person, not just like your physical. Sorry, I got interrupted. I'm gonna have to
Hey,
edit
not
this
a
out.
problem.
Yeah. Anyway, where were we?
Well, so for example, one of my students ended up being one of the Portland protesters who was first hit by a car during the protest last year, while another co-instructor from the Junri Academy was one of the protesters in the Lafayette Square. So we're very big on social activism out of the Junri line, I would say, which is interesting when you
That
think about it.
that is interesting, and I think that's a very like, I don't want to use the word noble because I feel like that's kind of been run into the ground in like memes and stuff. But I feel like it's selfless and it's a really good thing that it's something you're brought together by martial arts and then you're all going out and doing these things that are like
Well,
not directly related but still good things
well,
for the world.
this particular school was a very big fan of having a tenant-based system. So I recall courage, loyalty, self-respect, integrity, all sorts of tenets that I think when you apply as a kid, it you just kind of shout these words, but when you become an adult and they've sort of been internalized, you begin to actually live them. So it has like well, affects the character, I would say.
Yeah, very much so. Actually, I can relate to that within my own style that I currently train Shurinji Kempo. We have a scripture that we read with parts about how we have to cooperate for the accomplishment of our teachings and create the ideal world, which it's about helping people and training under people so that you can do better for the people that don't train or don't have the abilities you do.
I absolutely think that those sorts of things, those tenets, those scriptures can have a big impact.
Would you think? Sorry, this is going a little bit off of the questions that I had sent you, but I think this is a really interesting topic. Would
Sure,
you
sure.
think that Do you think it's necessary as a martial artist to have some sort of tenet rule or rules to follow within your style or your
No,
teaching?
no, not necessarily. I think a person does martial arts best if they have one, mainly because it helps give goals. But for example, if you're doing a Taijiquan for health exercises, there's no real reason to attach a moral principle to it. There's no, it's all about the application. If you're doing MMA, you don't really have to worry too much about the ethics. You have to worry more about, sorry, you don't have to worry about the morality. You have to worry about the ethics and following the rules. It's depends on what you're trying to do with it, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so well, now we've had a bit of that. Within your martial arts that you have experience with, where do you think some of them can improve? What do you think could be done better within martial arts that you've done, or the martial arts community as a whole?
So, oh, that's a tricky one because sometimes it's a problem with the style, and sometimes because
That's the
no
problem with the
styles.
school.
Yeah, exactly. No style is perfect, but for example, I see a lot of Taekwondo people who they're not really keeping their hands up. They're not. How do I say that they're fencing as opposed to sparring? Things like that.
Yeah,
Then over on the American side with Krav Maga, there's a lot of cardio focus as opposed to self-defense orientation. I'm over in Israel now practicing Krav Maga, and it's way more focused on escapes and managing crowds and how to de-escalate situations. And it's, I think in the USA, we perhaps lose some of the integrity of the art from their homeland. And I
yeah,
think it can be beneficial to sort of get in touch with the roots, even if just the instructors. So you can sort of get that more pure methodology, I would say. Because there's nothing wrong with going to what do we call them? The local strip mall and going to a taekwondo school there. But there's something to be
yeah.
said for going to Europe and practicing there and then going to go check out what they do in South Korea to see what the differences are and maybe what the best way is, so to speak, for yourself.
Yeah, I definitely understand that. As in, I'm the British European representative on this American mostly community channel, so we see a lot of differences between our experiences because of that. And I can imagine Krav Maga is somewhat one of the ones that are more looked down upon in the West, and obviously you're training it in its land of invention, as it were. I can imagine that is a big difference.
Well, sure. So in the USA, if a lot of instructors admit they make it kind of hokey because they're Israeli and they'll just say that they used it in the IDF when maybe they only did a week of training every 3 months. They never actually were like special forces, which people tend to think everybody in the IDF is. But here, everybody in class is or was a former soldier. They're serving or they were serving and they're in reserves. So it has actual use case here where if it doesn't work, they'll ditch it as opposed to sort of not always having the pressure testing because they use it with the armed forces. If it doesn't work, someone dies.
Yeah, definitely. Like it's one of those things. It's like when you're under the situation constantly where you need it to work, then of course it's going to work. Whereas opposed to if someone's doing it or did it for like, oh, this could be cool to find out about. Nothing to say there's anything wrong with that, but they won't have the experience of why it needs to work in that way.
Yeah, I usually would say with Krav Maga, at least you want to run it through the federations. But I do joke a little bit that it's Krav Cardio in USA and Krav Maga in like Israel or Britain's actually got pretty good Krav Maga. I think partially because the Green Beret in the military they've implemented some of the training stuff from out here. So there's because that's originally how I learned it was the U.S. Army began to implement it for intelligence officers, and my family is a bunch of intelligence officers. So when they would bring the unit over, they're like, "Oh, you do Taekwondo? Well, throw a kick. Let's see what you can do." And it's like, "Why am I on the ground now? What did you do?" I'm like 13, 14, but that was what got my interest sparked.
Yeah, well, that's really cool. And also, we seem to have been joined now by Lo. Thank you for making it late.
Hello, hello, welcome.
Yeah, still on a vacation, so I figured I'd stop in for a minute.
Hope you're enjoying it.
Yeah. So to continue that discussion, then, so that's actually really cool. My experiences over here in England with Krav Maga have not been the best, but there was not been the most broad. So I'm sure that you know probably a bit more about Krav Maga than me in that sort of sense. That's
Hey,
actually pretty cool. I might look into it.
I'm still just trying to explore it myself. You find good people and bad people.
Yeah, I mean that's true of anything really. I think what I was saying earlier, the what we were talking about with the idea that if something you don't have the experience of needing something to work, then you might not be able to make it work. That's always been a theory of mine as to why you see a lot of McDojos coming out of America because they have so many sort of tools of self defense and things like that. People don't often, especially and in like really big cities with a really like with a lot of police enforcement, they don't always, a lot of them don't need to have to use it to protect themselves, so they can get away with it not actually being functional.
And on
Checks out.
the other end of the spectrum, the Philippines.
I would definitely say so. I can't disagree with any of that.
Okay, let's go on then. That was actually a really good discussion right there. On to our next question. What made you start in your martial arts training?
So I got a theory based off my life experiences where I was basically 3 and I really like Power Rangers. So I kept begging my parents to let me do it. And as a birthday gift for my 4th birthday, they took me to the school and signed me up. He gave me a few trial lessons. And then when I hit 4, they let me come back to actually start practicing. And that's where it took off. Now, the funny thing is, when I switched from the Cookie Kwan school uh, to the ITF school, I didn't find this out until after it closed because he retired after 20 years of teaching. And I can't blame him wanting to go on. That one of his brown belts had been one of the first Power Rangers. And eventually at one of the company barbecues that we had to sort of commemorate the school, because, there's hundreds of black belts, hundreds of students, even thousands. And we all sort of kept in contact even after the school's closed. It's been 17 years and we're still friends. So one day, uh, Jason Lee Scott showed up at the barbecue. Or I should say his actual name, Austin St. John. He showed up at the barbecue. So it's sort of like came full circle when I was about 23. I got to meet him and spar with him a little bit. And it's like, this is very surreal. I originally got into this I wanted to be a Power Ranger, and I got to actually spar the actor who inspired me. But I think what I
Bro,
later, sorry, the later on what I realized is I wanted to do humanitarian work and help others. It wasn't to be a Power Ranger because you can't like karate chop someone like a putty man to solve problems, usually.
I mean, sometimes, sometimes there's just bad people, and the best way to help someone is to deal with them.
Yeah, I understand that.
No, but that, I mean, in your own way, that's still, you're going out there and helping people. Like that's kind of what those superhero TV shows are meant to represent to people, is doing the right thing and helping people. You don't have to be out there in spandex and laser resistant bike helmets with magic daggers and stuff to actually be like a hero like them.
You mean to
No,
tell me I bought the
honestly,
spandex for nothing?
one of the projects that I work with is a New Dawn in the Negev, which is a Bedouin-based nonprofit that do education reforms. And when COVID hit, there was a mass shortage, right? So my dad used to be a DHS official. He worked with the U.S. Army, Dr. Fauci, all that, but like in 2010, so to speak, so about a decade or so ago. And he began to pitch the idea to my cousin who works up in Toronto as a plastic surgeon about ways that we could potentially reuse masks. Because out here in the Negev, well, when the mask shortage happened, the Bedouin community, the Arab communities got hit really hard. The Israeli Jewish ones too, but especially the Arab ones. So thanks to the family connections, they released a sort of study where they proved that you could reuse the masks with specific kinds of heat treatment, and we applied that here. So it's sort of, you measure it by how much good you can do, how much you can help. And I think that's sort of, because at the same time as doing the education reforms and the medical supplies, we're also doing like wrestling practice with the Russian community, sort of trying to build a better relationship so that things can move forward more peaceably, I would say.
That's awesome. I think if it's okay with you, what we're going to do after this is have you send us some links to some of the nonprofits you work with for us to put in the description of the podcast.
Sure.
And so people can go look, help, donate, whatever. it's always good to do something to help people.
I think it's important. The superheroes they got those side projects where they're always trying to push it forward to help others or help the community or contribute or what they can.
We were talking last week. Our co-host Masa isn't with us today because she's at a seminar, but she was saying last week that within her Kempo dojo, as soon as they hit black belt, it was mandatory in their dojo that they had to start giving back to the community.
It's not a bad idea. Not a fan of forced community service.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't know how that works. She just mentioned it.
Well, that's tough. You get your black belt and then it's almost like you get hit with a misdemeanor in the US. But it's a nice sentiment. It does teach people to be responsible. So
I think responsibility is something that you have to learn in different aspects. Like you have to be responsible for controlling your power levels. Otherwise, you'll just go around knocking out white belts. Or breaking people's ribs in point tournaments. Low.
I have no idea what you're speaking of.
Anyway, let us moving on to who is your biggest inspiration?
That's a tough one. So I'm not sure I could say that there's one specific martial artist that inspires me, but there's elements of different martial artists that I really enjoy seeing. Like maybe I like hearing about Flo from Book of Five Rings kind of deal. Maybe I like to watch some Bruce Lee films and see the theatrics. That's a difficult one because the Red Power Ranger isn't my role model at 31 anymore. Though he did become an EMT, so he's like, I don't know, he's kind of like the real deal at this point, as close to a real world Power Ranger, I guess you can get.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm nearly 21, and my role model, one of my role models, is still Jason David Frank. So
I think my teacher's still one of my greatest role models.
I think that should always be a thing. Like if you can't look up to your teacher, then why are they your teacher?
Well, the funny thing is, sooner or later, it moves from just being teacher and student to friend, almost like family. So yeah, you always look up to them though.
Yeah, I mean that goes back to the ancient times when martial arts were taught down through family.
Oh, that would be different. I kind of feel bad for his son. That would be tough if my master is my father. That would be rough.
Yeah, no.
I was a dojo rat, just getting the being on his radar for 6 hours every day. That'd be tough having to do it for 24 hours. Woo. He was
You gotta watch out behavior.
Well, he was a kind of angry, you could say, very intense. He grew up in DC in the 60s when it was still like the ghettos were still pretty rough. Crime was very high. So he would always say things like, who can you trust when the sun goes out? Or, it's like, well, I understand the sentiment. It's a little bit eccentric though, but he was very, very, some of the self-defense stuff that he taught me actually has helped save my life. So it's hard to argue with how eccentric he was when it works.
And was this Krav Maga or Taekwondo?
No, Tang Soo Do, Chung
Tang
Kwan.
Soo Do. Oh, right, nice. I've seen some really mixed sort of things with Tang Soo Do. Like, in one hand, it's really famous right now as the style of Cobra Kai, which is all sort of hard violence and doing someone a damage.
Yeah.
And then you watch it in real life, and it seems very sort of. I've seen big differences. I've seen a lot of like very sport karate taekwondo-esque, and then I've actually seen some self-defense oriented stuff.
It really does depend on the school. Ours was relatively close to the original Junri line. Chung De Kwan and Tang Soo Do were created by the same person. It was just sort of rebranded as Chung De Kwan so it could fit under the Taekwondo umbrella when they formed the federation in like 1959. So if it's Tang Soo Do, if it's closer to that, you're going to see some really cool stuff out of it. Like it gets down to almost internal art level stuff. But when it gets to like more of the Cookie Kwan modern stuff, it switches more to the sports aspect. I sort of was caught in what I would call a legacy school. It would have made more sense for the school having existed in the 70s when it opened, and I caught the tail end of it. But yeah, even up
That
until about 2005, it was good. Yeah. But of course, that school's closed, so now it's what's left in DC is sports. And June Rhee has passed away, so
that is a shame. It
well, I
seems.
mean,
I want to say what you're saying.
there's still about 500 of us from our school running around in the area, and there's still like 2,000 and God knows how many congressmen June Rhee trained running around DC. So yeah, we're still around. Just the schools are sort of
Yeah, it's just things are spread out more.
spread out, and the original teachers are sort of gone.
Yeah. Would you say the further time goes on, the more sports oriented and less traditional things are getting?
Not necessarily. It depends on your system. I would say maybe Taekwondo might be drifting that way, but then things like Taiji Chuan or Bagua, man, those are still super traditional. Or Koryu, wow, those guys are very, very traditional still.
Yeah, you make a fair point. I think it's you see a big sort of dependence on the culture as well, like where the martial art comes from has a big significance on how it's practiced, even when it's like practiced differently from the traditional form.
Plus, you got stuff like Hema. Some groups are almost straight up like recreators. Some are
Yep.
just taking old techniques with new equipment. Some end up becoming blacksmiths so they can try to make it like as perfectly to the old days as possible. It's sort of, I guess it's whatever your thing is. If you want to go tradition, you might as well. If not, don't. I like it though.
Definitely. Okay, I feel you may have already answered this next question, but I'm going to say it anyway in case you have anything you want to expand on. What do you think martial arts has done the most for you or improved the most for you?
So I think I know it has helped save my life. There was a self-defense situation I had a long time ago, and it definitely helped save my booty.
Damn, that's
Specifically,
something.
specifically the Hapkido stuff. That was the best.
Oh, really? The hub keto is what saved you.
I would say so. About 2 years ago, I think I could talk about it. So I was in an indictment. I was accused falsely of a crime. And in the process of getting a witness, when the police were arresting me and going through my stuff, they attacked my witness. So I interceded and we sort of wrestled, and I got one of the officers subdued. And there was a 2-year indictment where the courts eventually decided I had acted lawfully and defended my friend since, he was beating him with a baton. So I just I pulled him
Holy
to the
hell,
ground
dude.
using the Hopkido stuff. So it's like, I'm pretty sure that saved my booty then.
Yeah, damn, like that saved you from a whole sort of. That's not even just like you're getting hurt or you're an immediate threat. That is something that could have had really long-standing issues if you hadn't been able to do that. That's insane.
Yeah, I was facing 5 years, but fortunately the court system is impartial and they understand that if the police act wrong, they're committing a crime.
Yeah. Well, Hapkido is somewhat related to our next question since it has connections to both of the martial arts we're asking about.
Ah,
Aikido, Taekwondo, sort of more arts that are famous for their less resistance. Do you believe that they are effective?
it depends what you mean by effective. They can be really good for their setting. I more of the opinion Aikido is sort of meant to be used sort of alongside a core martial art. Like I don't think it's like sort of like asking how there's schools that study movement, for example, and a lot of them have stuff in it that you could consider martial arts or self-defense or striking and punching and kicking based techniques, but they're not oriented specifically or necessarily toward that because Aikido is a very spiritual thing. Hapkido sort of came out of the Korean War, so it's combatives based quite a bit. And like any art, if you train it for self-defense, it'll work. If you train it for the ring and then try to use it on the street, I don't know if it'll work. It's sort of, and if you never spar, good Lord help you, I don't think it'll work, period.
Yeah, I think that's true for any art. The majority of people that actually know anything about martial arts will agree on that.
Well, look at it like this. Some arts, you only need to pressure test, spar, like, let's say 5 hours a week, right? After a year, you're in a pretty good place. You can probably defend yourself with it. Some arts might take 20 years. To be able to kick adequately in a self-defense setting, uh, that's high risk. To do it and actually do it, like make it work, that takes time. So it can work, but you got to really like pressure test it for a long time, potentially.
Those arts you mentioned that might take 20 years rather than like 5 to be effective for self-defense. Do you think there's still a reason to train them?
Yeah, there's always a reason if you enjoy it.
Nice, plain and simple answer there. If you enjoy it, then do it.
Yeah, I mean that's I think underlying the wanting to help others. That's what keeps me going in martial arts. I really enjoy getting into the stances and making the movements.
Okay. Now, back a little bit to self-defense situations. When it comes to having to defend yourself, what do you think is the most important aspect?
Don't take your eyes off them.
Yeah, I say that was like. So does that mean you're not a fan of the turn and run concept then?
If you can, good. But what happens if you can't?
Then
I
you're
mean, I
probably
don't
gonna
think
get jumped.
well, that's fair. But then you actually have to defend yourself.
Yeah.
Hopefully you can de-escalate things before anything bad happens in the self-defense situation. So if we're talking about just mitigating the whole thing, definitely you want to be able to de-escalate. Like that's like if someone's yelling at you, instead of like putting your hands up in self-defense, you put a hand on the chin just so they're ready to catch anything. But it doesn't look aggressive. But if you're actually like in a self-defense situation where you're actively being attacked, I do not recommend taking your eyes off them even if you're trying to run.
Okay. This one's again a little bit off of the questions that I sent you. When you have your eyes on someone in fighting, where do you look? Because we get different answers. Some people say the chest, some people say the eyes. Where are your eyes when you're fighting?
So I got crap vision and I usually toss my glasses off, especially when I'm sparring, but like I'll actually throw them at the person because come on, I'm not getting those back no matter what happens, probably. So usually you want to look at what they're moving. Like you should try to have a look past them while sort of looking at their core and drifting it between I almost want to say the head to the chest, but to be honest, for me, they're just a blur. So it's sort of watching more for where the outline is shifting.
I can see that. I look off the point of the shoulder because I recently have had a very large downgrade in my vision.
Ah,
So it allows my peripheral vision to pick up on minute movements.
well, our school did a lot of multiple sparring just for the self-defense aspect of it. So after a while, you sort of get taught instead of focusing on a specific thing, you sort of want to dilate your pupils so you can keep track of because look, it's fine to keep track of 2 limbs. Once you got 4 or 6 or 8 limbs to keep track of, let alone their feet, if it's like 16 limbs. To keep track of all of it at once, you sort of got to widen the field of view or do that thing where you look past them. I don't like that one, but there's different ways you
It's the
can
same
play with
concept.
yeah, well, otherwise you're gonna get hit by stuff you can't see.
See, I picked it up in stick sparring.
Yeah, that would be good for it. The drill work, definitely. Unfortunately, I just got beat up until I learned to watch for it.
Yeah, it was taught to me in stick sparring because I had a habit of focusing on a singular point of the body, which in turn caused me to get caught by everything.
Well, I think it also comes up when you're doing redirection work, because like if you want to move their limb to get in the way of the other guy to block them, for example, like you're deflecting, you kind of got to know where the other guy is also in relation to their limb. So it's like object tracking.
Like, I always bring it up whenever I'm talking to people about trapping. You can sit there and focus on trapping all you want, but what happens if they sweep you?
Yeah,
You
you
kind
sort of
of
want a
on your shoulder.
comprehensive.
Also, sorry if my voice is a little bit off. We're walking out.
Oh, you're fine. Fine.
But yeah, just using your peripheral to pick up on every minute thing instead of auto focusing on a singular point.
There's a drill I do sometimes. It's more situational awareness, but it works over for the multiple sparring and motion tracking. But just when you're walking down the street, try to look at the people in front of you and then the people on the other side of the street. Try or the cars driving by. You'll find that once you get practice at tracking more objects, it gets easier to manage more. Kind of like making a game of it.
I do something similar whenever I'll enter a restaurant to eat. I'll keep my eyes on where I'm walking, but I'll try to see how close I can get to counting the amount of people sitting at different booths and tables.
It's not a bad idea. The one I do also is I walk when I read when I walk. So like if you don't want to run into stuff, you kind of got to use your peripherals.
Yeah, I can't do that. I get motion sick.
Oh, thank God I don't.
We've talked a bit about how it will depend on your school and your training, how the martial art is effective or how it works. But I think it would be somewhat disingenuous to not admit that this problem is mostly with traditional martial arts. So, what do you think is, or why do you think there is a problem within traditional martial arts?
I think with traditional martial arts, the problems there are some, but they're not as accurate as folk want them to be. So, for example, Koryu, some of the most traditional martial arts in the world, have a long history of working even into the 20th century, at least for self-defense. In regards to competition, it's questionable. Like with MMA, we've seen plenty of these traditional martial arts not work well for it. But here's my question. When this new format was introduced with the very specific rule set it follows, certain martial arts will be more geared toward it, either for that format or forcing them into a format that either doesn't include it. Like think of when Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was included, there were no real rules that it violated, but it also was doing something completely outside of the format it was initially geared for. And then when the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guys got to fight the catch wrestlers, they got screwed over. And it's like every time someone would use something that shifted the format, it would always be a game changer. And what this got me thinking was maybe these traditional arts are having such a hard time in MMA because they're not oriented toward it, not training for it yet. And then we saw after about 10, 11 years, Pereira, Silva started showing up with Taekwondo and using it functionally, devastatingly. Now we're starting to see karate guys pop up in MMA. I wouldn't be surprised if in another 10 years we start seeing the Bagua Sanda guys start popping up.
There's already one, I don't remember his name. I think he's like a Russian guy using Sanda as his striking base in the UFC.
Just give it time. I think a lot of these have very specific formats that they train for. In MMA, even if it is sort of an equalizer, it's very different from how these people were training. So you sort of, it's like asking someone who's never sparred to suddenly be able to spar using their system. Chances are, if they were practicing for the last 20 years, like all the other professional fighters were, they could. So all these guys had to sort of sit back and go, well, crap, we got to actually pressure test this to make it work. So it's not really a problem with the art itself. It's more what they were training it toward.
Yeah, if you look at traditional Muay Thai or like an older version of Muay Thai, it was nowhere near what the Muay Thai well, it was somewhere near, but it's not the Muay Thai you're training. People are training for the UFC right now. They changed it and trained it in a different way specifically for that art. So it's not that
Exactly.
the other arts are less effective than Muay Thai. It's that Muay Thai was changed to compete in this format.
Yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree. Taekwondo saw it all the time. There's I think it was 1973 axe kicks got added into the Olympic style rule set. And it's not like we didn't do them before, but we certainly didn't emphasize them as much as we do now since they were added. So it's as you change the format for what you wanted with rules or conditions, it has a backfeed on the art.
I've always thought one of the biggest issues that traditional martial arts have when it comes to being in a combat sport is that combat sport practitioners have the conditioning and physical like exercise training as part of their routine. It's part of their martial art training to compete. Whereas when a traditional martial art, you have warm-ups and conditioning, but you're not training for the competition, so you don't have the physicality. You need to do that separately.
Yeah, yeah. But there's also another problem for traditional schools, at least in the USA. Though honestly, it's a worldwide problem. They got to eat, and having 5 to 10 extremely good students doesn't, necessarily keep a roof over your head. So they have to expand the roster. They have to create events that can drive money, income. So you get the sort of watering down cycle as they sort of rescale the rank system if there is one.
Yeah, you tend to have like, I mean, a lot of martial arts instructors teach that they have second jobs on top of their teaching, but the ones that don't, you'll see that they have to be able to get a lot of people in, or they need to charge a lot.
Yeah, I usually am inclined to think that people who have a job and teach, how do I say, a lot of them do it for free. I know a lot of people who are like that because there's no real reason to have income coming in, so they do it because they enjoy it. There's more integrity to it for sure. That usually translates better.
Yeah, you get to focus more on the art rather than just bringing people in. Though that's not always a problem. Like my dojo that I'm in now, I'm helping bring people in. I make the adverts that we use, but like the art was originally meant to be a non-profit art, and at the moment it's just basically the tuition fees are just paying for the rent on the building we use to train.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, you guys got a building. You shouldn't. It's cool if he can pay for it, but he shouldn't have to on that one. But if it's like in his basement or there's like a small place he's running, we're talking like a big gym. Yeah, I can't blame him. I would definitely
It's in
charge
a
for that.
church.
Oh, a church? Oh, okay, I understand.
Yeah.
There's a few tank
I
pseudo places up in DC where it's run through synagogues in the basement.
Mhm.
So
It's a big
if
thing
it,
over here. Church rules are used in a lot of martial arts. I've seen a lot of people confused by that because it's apparently less common in America.
in the
Oh, well,
USA, they do it a lot in
places
churches,
that
actually.
trainings run out of the church.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of places using church basements. They're good for congregations.
Yeah.
The synagogue
That's
one
why
was
you guys
surprising to
go
me.
build a shed.
Why was the synagogue one surprising?
I'm Jewish and I had never heard of any of the synagogues doing this. And then one day I go into one and it's like, wait, we all do this? We need to work on our
Just a-
advertising or something.
Well, I was like, are you saying all Jewish people are secretly like doing like hard self-defense training?
Oh, that's not, that's perfectly fair. That synagogue actually had a few bombs mailed to it. And I think someone tried running a car into it once. So that
Jesus
they had like,
fuck.
yeah, well, welcome to DC.
Yeah, okay, that's see, there's a reason
Again,
I
I
avoid that
say-
country.
Again, I say you guys just need to build a shed.
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu grassroots effort, huh?
Don't mention Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu while Lowe's talking. It will not end well for us on the podcast.
I'm just gonna mute.
Uh, okay, so you'd mentioned Taekwondo people and karate people popping up in MMA. Are you a fan of MMA? Do you watch it much?
I do, and I enjoy it. Wouldn't say I'm glued to it, but we run a couple feeds over on the server, and I try to keep up to date. I try to keep up to date on MMA, Muay Thai, Waco, and the Olympics. And I tried to do some of the fencing stuff, but it's hard to keep track of.
Which organizations, which divisions do you watch?
One fight, I really like them.
Yeah, we're a
UFC,
big
of
fan of
course.
one.
WTF Federation. I don't care if they change their name. It'll always be World Taekwondo Federation to me.
They changed their name.
Yeah, they got tired of people making the meme about WTF, so they changed it to World Taekwondo.
It's just WT now.
Yeah.
That's a Wing Chun organization, though. God damn
Well,
Taekwondo.
Yeah, well, I mean, what was the choice? They either did that or they kept the WTF every single time. To be fair, people were making fun of them for it for like 2 decades before they changed it. So
Yeah, that's I can't blame them.
what style do you do? Oh, I do the WTF Taekwondo. What?
Exactly. So you watch a lot of MMA, and would you say that the MMA, like, as the martial art, people will say MMA is not a style. It's a debatable whether it's a style, but the general mix that they have, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai, boxing, wrestling, as in those elements that is brought in, would you say that is good for self-defense, or would you rather train something else for self-defense?
It's about as good at self-defense as say Taekwondo. Both of them are training
It's
for
not as or about
competitions.
as.
About as both of them are training for competitions.
That is
There's
a hot
plenty.
take right there.
There's a lot of people who have done MMA, gone on, earned money in it, and then they end up getting stabbed or killed in a knife fight or something on the street. Brazil,
Yeah,
UK, Russia. There's plenty of these stories.
we
So I
I
don't.
saw a
I'm
video.
gonna say judo. Just do judo.
Oh no, the judo guys usually do pretty good. I think I've even read stories about blind judo people who are mugged and like they just like wrecked face.
I think it was Fight Commentary
Again,
Breakdowns that put
judo.
out a video recently about an MMA fighter seeing how he did against untrained and trained fighters with knives, which I thought was pretty interesting.
We work with him. He's helping
Yeah,
us set
yeah,
up a few projects.
yeah. We've had a couple of meetings with him. He's a really cool guy.
I love him. Jerry's amazing.
Okay, now moving a little bit away from the self-defense and practicality topics, let's talk about you'd said earlier if you have fun with it, then of course there's a reason to train it. Which martial art do you want to train that you haven't before?
Sanda. Sanda.
You
I would
want to
love
you
to
want to do
practice it.
Sanda?
Yeah. That seems to be the next step.
Would you want to do the Wushu Federation Sanda, or would you want to go to a kung fu school who has a specific style that they train in Sanda?
I'm asking myself that exact question. I don't know how to answer it yet. Would love to find someone who could find a way to work my Bagua past experiences into functional sparring. I don't
Well,
think it's
we have me and Lo, we have a friend who he does Sanda. It's International Wushu Federation, but it's under one of the heads of the organization, so they interlink their traditional system within the Sanda decently. It's not just the kickboxing training. So I've seen a few of schools like that.
I know they're out there. And
Definitely out
I
there.
know they can do some damage.
They do really well. If you look in the Sanda competitions, the schools that are kung fu schools are really high up. I think
Oh,
the
it's
Shaolin
like
Temple is pretty high up.
yeah, well, some of that stuff's like what I wish MMA could be in the technical side of things. They like
Yeah,
actually doing art instead of just raw aggression combined with techniques. It's almost like traditional mixed martial arts.
I've seen some amazing stuff out of some traditional schools doing Sanda. Like their head movement is like incredible, and the kick catches that they do, they're kind of awesome.
For sure. Anybody who hasn't seen Sanda, however you want to pronounce it, check it out.
Yeah, Sanda is really interesting to me because it's a sport that came from a sport that also was somewhat interlaced with military training. It's really a mixed bag of everything. Like they had Sanda rule tournaments, they had Sanda as a system for the military, and then they had Sanda as a system and a sport for the Wushu Federation, based off of the previous two iterations of Sanda.
Yeah. There's like as many Chinese martial arts as there are out there and family styles, and you can probably find someone doing it with Sanda.
Yep, I'm the Shaolin Temple official website says itself. Sanda is free fighting, and it should be 50% of your kung fu training.
I definitely agree.
I hope you get to try it. I've seen some really cool stuff from Sanda. Uh, what is your favorite weapon in the martial arts?
Well, I'm pretty good with knives.
That is a concerning statement, my friend.
Well, I've done core use, so there's a lot of practice with different stuff from size to katana. I'm very short, so like I usually am more familiar with like a wakizashi to be honest, but there's bow staff and nunchuck experience. But I have to say the knife work is the most fun. Mainly because no matter how much, so like when you do kendo and stuff, eventually you're gonna get good at it, and you're gonna stop getting scored on. Eventually, when you do bow stuff, you're gonna get good at it, and if you go into like a kind of sparring match, well, you're gonna do fine. But with knives, doesn't matter how good you get or how bad they are. Chances are, if you're using like a dummy sort of practice thing and you're just testing out the pressure testing, does this self defense work? Like realistically, you're gonna get hit. It's actually difficult. It's truly hard. I
Yeah,
would say it's the
knives. It's
hardest.
because I think that's it. It's because the knives don't have that much weight behind them, like a bow or a sword does. You can't really see it coming. You don't have a lot of space to move away with still countering it.
Or a lot of the deflections will end up with you getting like cut or It's very interesting. In 20 years, no matter how what they do, whether it's that crazy berserk like slab and stash like a Navy SEAL, or it's like just scissoring, or if it's just like a random slashing attack, it's a coin toss, no matter how skilled you get, which I always thought was very interesting. You do get better at it, but still a decent chance you're always going to get struck. And it's like, wow, this is hard. So when you
That's
get
the
good at it,
reality, man.
yeah. Plus, I'm good at throwing knives, so I enjoyed that. I'm from Virginia, so a little bit of redneck in there.
Then we were in that A. I don't know why I say A like I know anything about that. Full Englishman.
Yeah, there's some country boys out there.
Okay, so just another little side question. You talk a lot about you say you like the knives and knife defense is difficult. You have quite a bit of experience in Korean arts. Do you kick knives out of people's hands?
I personally do not.
Do you, have you seen those videos?
I know self-defense stuff that has it. I just don't think it's wise. It's very
I
easy to get your
mean,
foot stabbed, I would say.
if you want an excuse to go and get stitches, I think it's what. No, I can't come into work today. I tried to kick someone and put their knife through my foot.
There's ways you can do it, but I wouldn't recommend it.
Fair enough. I think that's the truth of anything. Like, there's probably a way you can make it work, but
Yeah, for
probably not.
sure. But is it the most efficient? And like, it's all about energy. You don't want to waste too much energy out there. And kicking is a lot of energy.
Definitely, definitely. Okay, so within the martial arts you've done within your martial arts training, why would you recommend others to train martial arts?
Well, I believe for health reasons. Plus, it's very nice to be able to go most places in the world and not have to worry too much about your safety.
That's fair. I mean, it
I
gives you
think,
just good confidence more than anything.
well, pragmatically speaking, it's what allows me to have traveled around Europe and then to get over here in the Middle East. Yeah. I'm not sure I'd still be alive without it. So
Yeah, Europe does not have the best history with Jewish people, so that's probably a fair statement.
I never ran in. No, it's funny. Back stateside, I ran into more anti-Semitism than I have outside the U.S.
Oh, I believe it. America's just infamous for hating everything.
Yeah, we're an interesting lot, aren't we?
Okay,
There's
so
many rough ones. There's as many good ones, though.
that's fair. I think a lot of people tend to make the quick judgment of, oh, it's America. It's probably racist as hell, homophobic as hell, sexist as hell, all that. But
No
there's
matter
always like,
what's, no matter what's going on and how crazy it gets, always look for the helpers. They're the jerks. They're the ones who are the loudest. The good ones are usually the quiet ones doing things and helping behind the scenes.
it's easier to be loud when you have a strong opinion as to opposed to when you just want to do what's the right thing.
But if we were supposed to live life the easy way, we wouldn't be alive. It's supposed to be a bit of a challenge and experience to grow.
Yeah. Okay, so which martial art do you think would do best in a zombie apocalypse?
Hema, Hema, however you want to pronounce it.
Hema.
Historical
Historical
European martial
European.
arts. Or Koryu, anybody that's going to give you a spear.
Yeah, spears, but the spear
Oh,
does the spear not run the risk of getting stuck?
actually, I'll be honest. Maybe Wing Chun on this one. I don't know if you've ever had a chance to take a look at their spear stuff, but it's sort of like
No, in
billiards,
my
like
4 years, I have never seen any of them.
no. So they have it, or go watch one of the Ip Man ones. They got a good demonstration of it. But basically, it's
That
like what you do in a cue hall, like with the pool balls. It's like that, but with a spear.
yeah,
It's
no,
like
yeah. So
super effective. None of the
honestly, like, yeah,
taekwondo, like spinny stuff. It's all just stabs nonstop from a distance.
I think I'm not sure. Like spears obviously help you keep the best distance, but I prefer something with a bit more like limb removal power. Because they're trying to grab or like get their head. Like you could think more like I think Hema's still the option, but axes or heavy slicing blades.
No, you don't want to get the blood on you.
All right, that's fair. That's fair. Huh? Maybe. Do you know what? Maybe Taekwondo then, because you got all the body armor.
No, the body armor's got gaps. Hema, that's what I'm saying. Hema, they got the armor and a spear.
You just want to walk around in a full plate European
I mean,
knight's
if there's a
armor.
zombie apocalypse, it's better than wearing without it.
What is that? Have you seen like the HEMA MMA division?
No, there's that. Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah, there's an
No,
MMA league where they wear full plate armor and just do full contact weapons.
I gotta check
Metal
that
weapon.
out. I've been
It's
watching
insane.
the Battle of the Nations, the 150 versus 150 Hema people. That one's been those are crazy.
That is insane. I always wanted to see something like that with like a not necessarily just like HEMA people or weapons people, just like martial arts in general, like a massive group fight like that.
Well, I would recommend checking out Battle of the Nations. It's wild.
Have you seen it's a football type game they do in I think every year in Florence, Italy, where the four towns of Florence make 30-man teams, and it's an MMA football mix where you have to get the ball to the other side or knock out the whole other 30-man team. Bare knuckle.
No, but I'm gonna want to watch it now.
Yeah, it's insane. I think the rules are you can only have 3 people on one man at a time, and yeah, that's about it.
It's like rugby, but more violent.
Yeah, which is saying something because rugby is already brutal.
But it could be more.
Yeah, it certainly could be more.
What's the
I
meme?
think
It could be better.
could be better. I think as we've been going on though, we're seeing a lot more of like this is taking jokes again into like a more deep discussion. I think we're seeing a lot more combat sports in the mainstream, and soon enough everything is going to be more violent.
I don't know. I see a lot of professional fighters. They end up picking up yoga, tai chi later on. They eventually find their way to the internal arts. It always ends up moving from fighting to well,
Chilling.
character development. Oh, there's that. Mike Tyson does yoga.
Really? That is not
Yeah,
something I knew.
I'm not even kidding. Start looking up all the retired fighters and start punching in like yoga or aikido or yeah, man. They're experimenting and learning to enjoy their craft better, deeper.
Speaking
Never
of
stop.
retired Speaking of like retired fighters and older fighters, this wasn't in the questions, but it's a recent news topic. Have you seen the press conference for the Logan Paul Floyd Mayweather fight?
Floyd Mayweather. I thought it was Tyson.
Was it Tyson? I thought he was. I'm sure he's fighting Floyd Mayweather.
Yeah, it's Floyd. Damn, I was hoping he was gonna lose an ear.
The press conference was the most insane thing I've ever seen in my life. So Floyd straight up said he's going to fight both Logan and Jake in the same night.
I wonder if I guess I gotta watch it. You think Floyd's gonna murder him?
Oh, 100%. 100%. So something happened.
But
Jake went
hey,
up to Floyd.
so in the traditional side of things, it's possible. There's moments where like the worst fighter in the school somehow ends up winning the competition because all the other good people knock themselves out, or just a bad day. What happens if he loses?
I think that will be the end of boxing as a sport. The best boxer of all time lost to Logan Paul. Can you imagine?
But I heard that they got pretty hands on with their face off, or no?
Yeah. So Jake Paul stole Floyd's hat and got rushed by his whole security team, and just took like I think he took like 2 hooks to the face from Floyd.
Oh, if Floyd shouted, "I'll kill you." I believe him.
It was beautiful. It was beautiful.
I'm gonna have to watch it. Oh, there's too much news. There's too much news in the world these days.
It's gonna be insane and beautiful because Floyd is way out of his he's retirement age. He's coming back to fight this dude who is twice his height, half his age, and he's still just gonna destroy him.
It's Floyd. I thought it was Mike Tyson. I really hoped. I had hoped he was going to lose an ear, but I guess not. He's
Yeah,
going
I
to go
think
out.
the one issue is Floyd is more of an evasive person. He tends to keep his distance and back away. He might have an issue with that, considering how tall Logan is compared to him.
No, my understanding is he hangs back until they gas themselves, and then he like blitzes the heck out of them.
That's fair. That is entirely fair.
I don't know. Someone's got a good guard. Sometimes the best way to get them to lower is let them tech themselves out.
Yeah, that's why Jake won his last fight, because Ben did not have a good guard.
Plus, when you're someone like Floyd, there's stuff you can do, like when they're throwing punches where you're sort of deflecting it with your elbows, and you can really make that sting on the hand depending where you hit the hand to deflect it. Like if you hit them
Yeah,
like where the fingers
definitely.
are, or like the top of the hand with like the actual point, that does some damage. And Floyd has the accuracy to do stuff like that. You see it all the time in this stuff. It's hard to tell if he's doing it by accident or on purpose.
I mean, Floyd has the accuracy to do anything he wants. He's Floyd, and he's fighting. I think Logan's only had 2 fights, and they were both against KSI.
No, I mean it's like when they're at such a proficient level, they're sort of doing more than one technique at a time. Like think of
Yeah.
who was it, Muhammad Ali, who would do the elbow behind the hook punch.
Mm-hmm.
At a certain point, there's so much nuance and so many layers to it. It's hard to tell if he's doing it deliberately or if he's just that good. It's like by accident.
Yeah, no, like literally, it's like they are doing stuff on such a completely different level that you'd have to train years to even begin to understand it, let alone actually pull it off.
Yeah.
I think, do you know Doug Marcaida?
No, I'm afraid I don't personally.
No, yeah, I wasn't meaning personally. I meant I do know of him.
Yeah, I've heard of him.
So I was watching a video of him, and he had a really cool quote. He was talking about people just train simple stuff to be good at fighting, but how does one person get better than the other if they're both just doing something that's simple? It's because you train the complicated stuff until it's simple to you, and then your simple is better.
Yeah.
And so these dudes have been training this stuff so long that they can do it in complicated ways that they make look so easy.
I've been doing it for 27 years on the Taekwondo side of things, and I'm nowhere near them. That's for sure.
I mean, that's a long time to be training. I think you must be at a certain level still.
I'm okay.
Do you have any plans on like competition, trying to get into fighting?
No, I think my only plans right now are developing the community I've been building.
Nice, and we will get onto that in just a second. We have one more question.
Ah.
Are you on team Miyagi-Do or Cobra Kai?
Definitely Miyagi, just he's more ethical, but both of them have some issues going on there.
They both got some issues, yeah. But I think
One's angry and one can't explain his art very well.
Daniel LaRusso is like one of the most stereotypical masters you've seen, where he will just spout some stuff verbatim that he heard his teacher say, and he will have no idea what he's actually saying. He's like hanging on to tradition as he knows of tradition.
When I first started, my grandmaster was a Korean immigrant, and how do I say it was very difficult to communicate, even now.
Yeah, I can imagine. I've heard some stories about like the grandmaster from other styles and coming and being like, "Yo, how do we say this? How do we tell him this?"
He never really bothered to learn English either, so it's kind of like, well, isn't this a language barrier?
I mean, I heard interesting stories though about Chinese masters and people who speak no Chinese going to China, and they speak no English, and yet you know what they're saying.
Yeah, because usually they'll hit you with it until you figure it out.
Quite literally.
In my case, yeah.
Okay. So, Zanjael, thank you for being with us today. Before we close out this podcast, I want to give you the chance to tell us about your platform and the things you're working on.
So as you know, Martial Arts Alliance split off from the original Amino community. We're a decentralized network of very many different martial artists. We currently have around 1,100 in our community on Discord and around 200 on Facebook. It's from over 150 countries, multilingual. It's not just English speakers. Our goal is to try to get people networking. And as a byproduct of content creators, we're bringing in a lot of YouTubers to work on different videos together, to work on partnerships. It's the community is very much growing.
Yeah, the YouTube community partnership is something that if anyone other content creators see this, I'd recommend you reach out to Zanjael about that.
Yeah, we're currently partnering with FairTube and IG Metal. Looking forward to helping build up our careers. It's a new industry and profession, so the rights and protections don't exist yet. But it's important work, I would say. But as a part of that, I've met so many cool people. There's a Shaolin monk in the server. There's heads of core use system. There's grandmasters. There's people who've been at it for 60, 70 years. There's youngins who are just starting. It's a very, very diverse community.
It genuinely is an amazing server, and we will have an invite to it in the description of this podcast, along with the charity and the charity links that we talked about earlier.
Yeah, if you're looking for a cool group of people to talk about martial arts with, come join us.
Zanjael, thank you for being with us today. And thank you guys for watching Combat Connections. If you like this video, hit like, subscribe, leave a comment telling us what you'd like to see next, and check out our other platforms. We are on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Spotify, iTunes, and any other podcast platform that you may prefer. Peace.